Hi guys, hi, how's it going? How are you doing today? Hopefully today finds you well. Today I am doing another best and worst shade in the palette series video on my channel. I started these a while back and I think like my move kind of put this hold on everything in my life, but I've only done a couple of them, and today I'm going to dig into ABH. I think that is a really good brand to dig into, specifically because I have so many palettes from ABH to go through. So that's what we're doing today, and I hope that you keep on watching. For those of you new here, hi, my name is Donna. I'm a lover of all things high-end colorful beauty and self-care. I also work in the beauty industry as a field leader for Ulta Beauty. Get a lot of education in my position. I like to bring you some education here on my channel, but ultimately I'm just out here to talk about makeup because I like to talk about makeup, and I know that if you're here you probably also like to talk about makeup, so let's just do that. Let's just jump in. All right, so I have quite a few palettes to go through today. These are all the palettes that have been launched by ABH in the time that I've been in the beauty space that I have purchased. I have 12. And I don't know, I don't think that there's any, because I got into this place where I felt like I needed to be a collector of ABH. So I started buying all the things, and then I felt FOMO over the ones that I didn't buy. So then I was like, oh, I need to buy them all. The only one that I didn't purchase was Riviera. That one was sent to me in a Beautylish Lucky Bag. The rest of them were purchased by me, myself, and I. So let's dig in. And just in case you guys don't know what we're doing here, I go in each palette and tell you, in my humble opinion, which is the best shade in the palette and which is the worst shade in the palette, as determined by myself. So this doesn't mean that it is the best shade or the worst shade. This just means these are my feelings on it, and that's okay because this is my channel, so I get to say which I think is best or worst. With that being said, I do love ABH formula. I think that they have some amazing eyeshadows. They're really powdery, but I do think that they're amazing eyeshadows. And for the most part, I do love every single shade in these palettes. But sometimes my worst shade is just because of a color preference, to be honest. And I think that that's where I'm at with this palette. This is Modern Renaissance. Everybody knows Modern Renaissance. This palette brings me so much joy. It really sparks some nostalgia feelings within me because it was one of the first high-end eyeshadow palettes that I ever purchased. It was definitely my first ABH palette. It was so revolutionary when it came out, and it came out right about the same time that I was getting into makeup. And the first halo eye I ever did was following a tutorial that Manny MUA did with this palette, and then I've since followed and fallen in love with and just absolutely stan Manny. So the best shade in this palette, in my humble opinion, is this one right here. This one is called Vermeer. And I have to be honest with you, the fact that this still shows up this way and this palette is like 6 years old in my collection is astounding to me. Like, this is just such a really pretty shimmer shadow and still has a whole lot of oomph in it. What I would say is the worst shade is just because of the color of it, and I didn't get along with it very well, and I still don't love this shade on me, is this Buon Fresco shade, and it is kind of like this gray mauve, and it's pretty. I just don't feel like it shows up on my skin in the best way. I feel like it definitely could be a little bit more purple or a little bit more brown. And I also don't feel like it went super great with the other shadows in this palette. And this is not done in any particular order because I just have them laid out on my desk right now. But Alyssa Edwards is a YouTuber that collabed with ABH to get this palette created. And when it was launched, I absolutely had to have it. It is just such a beautiful palette One of my favorite shades in this palette is the white, which is called Headliner. It's this guy here. I felt like it was perfect for the brow bone, and it was truly one of the best whites that I had in my collection at the time. It is such just a really beautiful pigmented white. And then my least favorite is probably this one here, which is called Inspire. And the only reason why, if I'm honest, like I said, is color. Like I said earlier, some of these are going to be about the color that it is, not necessarily the shadow. I also just feel like this is a gold that doesn't have a whole lot of impact, and I have far better golds in my collection. This one is just such a subtle shimmer shadow and really not a pretty color of gold. We could probably go round and round about this palette if I'm honest, but I really love Subculture. And I remember when this palette launched, it was one of the only palettes, or I guess I should say the first palettes, that I set my alarm and knew I needed to purchase this palette as soon as it launched. I was so excited for this palette to come out. This is what it looks like. It is just beautiful, really, really pretty. The best shadow I feel like that's in here has probably got to be this All-Star shade right here. It is just so impactful, I guess, and deep. Oh my gosh, just look at how raw this shade is, and it's just rich and beautiful. The worst is definitely this electric shade right here. No, we're changing that one up, actually. The worst was Cube. This is Cube right here, and I had such high hopes for this shadow, but I mean, first and foremost, look at it on my finger. It's like kind of nothing, right? And then you put it on and it's absolutely nothing. Can you even see it? Barely. It's supposed to be a duochrome, like white to pink, and it just failed. It just failed. It failed on all levels of what it could have done. It failed. You know, the electric shadow in here is also not great. This one also was a duochrome, like green gold. Also not great, but Cube was one that I really, really wanted to be amazing, and it really just wasn't amazing. Next we have Norvina. Norvina was another one that once I saw the color story of it, I had to have it. So my favorite shade in this palette is probably this one down here called Drama, because it's just a really beautiful, like a blackened purple shadow, but it has a little bit of sheen to it, but it also like works really well in the crease, like a satin type shadow. And honestly, my least favorite is going to be this one here, because it just isn't a great periwinkle. I think that it just looks dirty. I think that you guys can see, maybe it's just a super patchy shadow. It doesn't blend well. It over blends. I mean, look, I'm rubbing my arm. It just kind of blended away. It's not a good shadow. Sultry was a palette that I didn't jump on the bandwagon for a long time after it came out. I didn't go for these kind of shadows, and most of it is, you know, kind of golds and bronzes, and I am definitely not a golds and bronzes kind of person. Like, I'm wearing like pinks. But I really did love this palette. I still love this palette. I really like how it is. Probably the best shade in here. This is one of the best silvers that I have in my collection, and this is Cyborg. And what I love most about this silver is it's kind of got this like pinky, almost lavender look to it. It's just so, so pretty. I think the worst in here is probably Slate, which is the gray, which is right next to it. It's really hard to do a gray really well, and while I do think that this is a good gray, I also think that it is not a great gray. I think that it is super powdery. I think it blends away. It doesn't have really great longevity. Out of all the shadows in this palette, all of them stay really, really well applied to your eye look, but I found a lot of fading to occur when I was using this shade in this palette. It's not a horrible gray. but it's also not a good gray. I do think that it's got really great pigmentation. It's just, it's not got the longevity that I need it to have as a shadow on my face. The next one I have is the Jackie Aina palette. This was also a collaboration between a YouTuber, Jackie Aina, and ABH. And this one, I don't feel like got all the love it should have gotten because it was part of like a trio of collaborations that came out boom, 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 back to back to back. And then all the big Norvina palettes came out, right? The Norvina collection or Norvina X ABH, whatever. So this one didn't get all the love it should have gotten, but this is a beautiful, beautiful ABH eyeshadow palette. I do think that it's got some duds though. To be honest, I think that the best shade in this palette is Sponsored, which is this one here. I think that they did themselves some really good deeds by putting this in the palette and really stepping up their game as it pertains to duochromes. And then the worst in this palette is going to be this one here, which is the purple, which is very sad because I wanted this to work. And this is called Bigwig. Again, it is a purple that should have been amazing, that isn't really amazing. I think that you guys can see it's a little bit patchy. It doesn't blend out. It doesn't blend very well. And when you are trying to blend it, it just kind of becomes almost transparent on your eye. I really hate using that purple. This has got some really beautiful, rich, gorgeous tones in it. Everything is so, so deep and rich. This purple is just awful. And it feels different in the pan than any of the other shadows in here, meaning it feels really like almost like sandpaper, very grippy to the touch as well. So then we have Soft Glam, and Soft Glam for me, it was another one of those palettes that I didn't really get into right off the bat. I didn't purchase it until it showed up in a set, and in the one that this came with, it had Modern Renaissance in this, and I gave the Modern Renaissance to my daughter, and I kept Soft Glam because I didn't have Soft Glam, but I wanted to make sure my daughter got Modern Renaissance for Christmas. So this is also one of the ones that I didn't purchase until it had been out for quite some time. Actually, I think it had been out and then went away and then came back. No, that was Sultry, which was also purchased in a box set, much like this one. My favorite shade from this is going to be Sultry, which is this one right here. And my least favorite is going to be Glistening, which is right here. So this is Sultry. This is my favorite. I think that you'll be able to see why it's my favorite. It is just a really pretty, like shimmery brown. It is so, so gorgeous. It goes on really, really smooth. It, doesn't have any problems blending out, staying put. My least favorite, Glistening. I just feel like this color, is it like orange sherbet? Is it like yellow? Is it like orange? Is it gold? What is this color? So the color would be the reason why I don't love that. I mean, in the palette, honestly, it looks very, very similar to the one right above it, but this one is so much more pretty than that one is. I just don't understand. I just don't know what to call that color, if I'm honest. The next one I have is the ABH Prism. This one, when I was looking at it, was almost too easy to be like, okay, this one's the best, this one's the worst. But truly, I feel like this one here called Dimension is the best. And I feel like this one here called Lucid is the worst. So, best and worst. This is Dimension. So pretty. Such like just a lavender, like blue mix. It's so, so pretty. It's got really great like shimmers within it that are just beautiful. It's almost duochromatic, but not quite. And then we have Lucid, which reminds me a lot of Cube in the Subculture palette, in that Can you even really see it? I mean, that one I think that you could see more. It does have this like gold to green shift to it, but it's still like so like just uninspiring. I would also say that this one here, also worst shade. This one, like right here, right here, it looks really pretty in a swatch, but then you put it on your eyes and it just doesn't stay. So to be honest, between this one and Subculture, I would say that this one is worse. All right, Riviera was one that I didn't pick up on my own, but I feel like there is some good shades in here, but I also feel like there isn't some great shades in here. I also feel like this palette really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, if I'm honest. Like every one of the mattes in this is either really, really bright or like really, really dull browns. So my best in here, honestly, is this yellow one here, and it is called Inheritance, and it was just a really pretty true yellow shimmer that didn't lean too gold. My worst is this one here, which is all about the color. Listen, this is just baby poop brown. It is ugly. It is so ugly. It is called Cabana. I think it was maybe supposed to be more mustard yellow, but it just didn't fit that way for me. So best, a true yellow shimmer that doesn't look too gold and it isn't too pale. It's just a really, really pretty shimmer. And then this matte, I feel like it was supposed to be more mustard than that, more yellow than that, but it leans too brown to be mustard, and it literally looks like a baby poop. The next one I have is Carly Bible. This is also a palette that I wasn't really sure I wanted to pick up, and at the end of the day went in and swatched and decided, yeah, let's pick it up. It's not my favorite overall. There are some standout shades. I really, really love a lot of these shades up here. But overall, like, it's just kind of a ho-hum kind of palette. I wouldn't say there's one in here necessarily that's the worst shade. So I'm going to just pick based on my color preferences. But there are some really great ones, and that is why this one sticks around. If I'm honest with you, this OA shade and this Jode shade, my favorites. So I'm going to pick OA as my best, and I'm going to pick this bronzy, like ugly, goldy, bronzy, brownie shade as my not favorite. This is called My Angels, and that one was called OA. So this is OA. Look at how pretty that is. I mean, really beautiful, kind of pink, kind of purple, kind of blue. Just shocked me. It's got really beautiful glitters inside of it that don't go anywhere. They're not like going to fall all over your face, but they help bring out kind of that multi-tonal feel for this shadow, even though it's not a multi-chrome. But this one, again, I don't know whose eye this is supposed to look good on, but it certainly isn't mine. It's another one of those that I feel like isn't yellow enough or brown enough to be pretty. It's just there. And while I know that it maybe was supposed to be a bronze that everybody loved, I think that it is quite possibly the ugliest bronze I've ever seen in my life. The last two are these two here, and these are some of the newer ones to the ABH lineup. This one is ABH Nouveau. I think that this one is gorgeous, period. I don't know that there is a worst shade in here, but we are going to look at them and we're going to see how we feel about them. I really do think if I had to pick best and worst, Wings would be best and Peacock would be worst. The reason why I'm going with this is not because I don't like Peacock, because I think that Peacock is beautiful, but because it doesn't work as nicely as the rest of them do, and it's supposed to be a duochrome that really doesn't showcase itself on my eyes in the way that a lot of my other duochromes do. This is the best. We're just going to go straight down here. That is Wings. Such a really beautiful and impactful, like minty green. And then we have Peacock. On application, it is beautiful. As you wear it throughout the day, like this like duochrominess of it really does go away, and then you're just left with this really ugly, rusty shade on your eye. So that's why I would say that's the worst. But I have to be honest with you, I really love this palette. So me picking a favorite and a not favorite out of this palette was a stretch for me. Rose Metals, I think, is different. And I don't mind this palette, but ultimately wearing this palette really proved to be challenging. I felt like every single eye look that I came up with utilizing this palette really looked dingy and dirty. So it wasn't my favorite palette to put on my eyes. There are some standout shades that I absolutely loved, but for the most part, I didn't love these shadows on my eyes. So I'm going to say the best one is this one here. Again, it's just a really pretty greeny, like kind of like almost sage green shade. So best. That is called Heavenly, and I think it's just super impactful and really brilliant, creamy white gold in shade, and was really beautiful on an eye look. For worst shade, I think I'm going to go with this one here. So this one is called Nova. And the reason why is because if I remember correctly, this one was so texturizing. Like every time I wore it, I felt like you could see every fine line on my eyes. I felt like that shade exacerbated my texture so bad. And also, it's just one of those shadows that looks like it could go with some of these other ones that are like, who are these colors for? Not me. It just did not look great on my skin tone. So with that said, those are all the shades that are my best and worst out of my ABH eyeshadow collection. I would be interested to know which ones you love and which ones you disagree with. Do you have these palettes and do you disagree with any of the choices that I made? There isn't a bad shadow in the bunch, maybe except for Lucid and Cube. But for the most part, there's not a bad shadow in the bunch. There's just whether I like to use it and whether I don't like to use it, what I really pull for when I open up this palette, what really speaks to me when I open up this palette, and what I absolutely don't want to use when I open up this palette. So those would be my faves and least fave shadows in my ABH palettes. Let me know what brands you want to see. I think the next one I have coming out is Best and Worst of Juvia's Place, unless I am mistaken. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a big like, subscribe to the channel if you loved it here. I loved having you, and I'd love to welcome you into my fam. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you and yours are doing well, that you're safe, that you're healthy, and that you're getting along as best you can, and that you are all loving each other, but loving each other from afar. And until next time, bye friends.